My clients are constantly saying things like, I don't know why I responded that way. I got an email and it took me 3 hours to just breathe again. Those are dysregulations that can be absolutely addressed.
I'll have what she's having.
Welcome to another edition of
She confidence.
podcast.
Welcome back. This is Tony. This is the She Talks Confidence podcast. I'm extremely thrilled to have an old friend back on the show, Jeanine Tripodi. Jeanine, how are you?
I'm great. Great to be back. And thanks for having me.
Oh, you have so much experience in the hypnotherapy and emotional regulation. And the reason why I wanted you on the show again is because you have a new niche. You've pivoted into something that I find fascinating because I've never heard of it before. But in
Yeah.
thinking, that's one of those things where you hear what it is and you're like, how has nobody done that before? It's something that seems like it's such a high demand thing, and it's a divorce composure coach. So you coach people going through divorce to have levels of composure. Can you give a
Yeah.
quick explanation on that?
Absolutely. So I'm an emotional reactivity consultant, but I am known more commonly as the divorce composure coach.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, I teach people composure as a skill so that they can navigate those high stakes moments, calm and in control, so they don't derail their legal strategy and they can actually implement the plan that they put together.
I've been through a couple myself, and I know you have. That would have been such a great asset to have during that time,
Yeah.
is to have somebody just give you the chill pill and have you help you out in this. Because I wouldn't wish it on anybody. It's not a great situation. Being able to compose yourself, and that's such a huge advantage to have going into something like
Yeah.
that. So today I want to take all that information and all that experience that you have and talk about being a composed leader and navigating high stakes transitions, and of course with confidence, right? Because composure is confidence. And I want to talk about I think that goes into the trend right now of emotional intelligence, the EQ factor, as being a superpower and not getting overly stressed and achieving your goals without burnout too. Because if you have composure and if you have levels of confidence, it's not like you're constantly on the hamster wheel trying to get somewhere and burning yourself out. So the first thing I want to ask you is just to come back into your particular experience. When did you have a situation to where it was a life-altering crossroads or a legal crossroads, and you felt your confidence or composure slipping, or if you have a story from any particular client that you have had recently?
Sure. About 47 just came to mind. But I'll say that, as you said, the entire divorce process, I focus particularly with divorce, but it is so relevant, as you said, with leadership
Mhm.
and clear decision making. Anyone's composure slips when old patterns surface. And that's the difference between performative composure. And a lot of people are taught or reach for tools to create in the moment performative composure. And while those are really great, unless you're actually digging deeper, you are just treating the symptoms. So I would say that confidence and composure are not personality traits. And a lot of people think they are. They think they either are or they're not.
Mhm.
It's actually the byproduct of internal architecture. And that internal architecture is what creates the embodied composure in the moment. Anytime anyone is reacting through legacy patterning, which we all do,
Mhm.
you're losing composure.
Mhm. Is it more about pattern recognition or pattern interruption that you deal with on a moment to moment? Do you find as though it's people that either don't know what that is or they don't know how to do the interruption that is a big component of what you do?
Absolutely. I think most people don't even realize that there's a pattern underneath it.
Mhm.
And a lot of people beat themselves up. I hear from really high performing people who are faced with this life transition, and their response is, I don't understand why I can't stay calm in the moment or why I react when X does this or says this. It's just an intense impulse. And that is because it's emotional, it's not cognitive. So we are responding to the threat that we perceive through all of the legacy programming. And by legacy programming, the patterns and our subconscious that has brought us safely to this day, safely in quotes.
Mhm.
Yes, it's all embedded there. And people don't typically look at it that way. We are looking for, oftentimes people are looking for an immediate, okay, I'll take a couple of deep breaths, and that is amazing. And I promote those tools as well. But they are bringing you down out of that physical response.
Yeah.
When you actually get into the internal architecture, you're rewiring the way you would react and giving yourself an opportunity to respond, which is so important in all areas of navigating life, leadership, and divorce.
Oh, it is 100%. And, you know, it transitions really well from the divorce context into a leadership context or any type of particular transition. When you take a look at just going through a transition or being in an anxious moment, is it about having the tools to when it comes up in that second, or is it about understanding everything and prepping yourself mentally before you're put in that particular position?
It is having tools that you can utilize in the moment that are going to create a somatic response and give you relief and pause physically. But we want to go deeper than that. So, that level below would be understanding the why of the pattern that creates that response. And then deeper than that would be let's reprogram and rewire that. But you need to have an understanding of where they came from, the roots of the programming, so
Yeah.
that they can be rewired and embodied.
Mm.
So, to answer that question, I think if you really have an individual that wants to understand why am I reacting this way, it's more than just take a few deep breaths.
Yeah.
It's very surprising what links underneath the surface. So, you get like an executive that's trying to say, present an idea or persuade someone or close a contract, and they are struggling internally with parts of themselves that they have not seen before, say in their work life.
Mhm.
And the reality is we develop the way we relate and attach to people as young as 18 months. A
Yeah.
lot of people don't
Oh, yeah.
realize how that flows forward and
Mhm.
impacts how we're interacting with someone who, say, feels authoritarian at work. So there's a
Yeah,
lot of as this underlying webs.
there are, and the most interesting thing that comes up when I deal with somebody like C-suite, like top executive, and I deal with women, so I can speak from that particular context. They get up to that point and everything's fine and everything's moving along, and all of a sudden something throws them off that they had no idea that this person or this dynamic or something that they bring into the table, which is triggering some sort of a subconscious program in them from maybe their mom or an event or something that they'd never come across in their 20 some years of being in the business. And that throws them so far off because they thought that they had it handled until
Right.
that particular thing happens. And when I talk to them, the interesting thing is you talk about going deep and going another layer. When they get to that point, a lot of times they want to know the exact particular reason so they can pinpoint it. And in doing traditional therapy for years back in the day, it's really hard because most of the time, like you said, the development happens in the first 2 years of life. A lot of it, the neural pathways, the highways, the neural pathways. And you don't exactly know, or you don't have a good idea or good memory of exactly why something happened. So
Right.
you'll tag on something later, or if you go to therapy when you're in your teens or something, you'll create a story around it, which may or may not be true. So to go a layer deep is effective for them, but a lot of times they want to continue to go and continue to go, and it's just continue to move the carrot. Do you have a way to stop them when they get to the point where they're like, "Oh, that's where it's from. It's not from mom, but it's from, oh, it's because I'm in this situation."
Yeah, I love that question so much. So, differentiation, I'm not a therapist. I am a hypnotherapist, and I'm
Mhm.
very clear with my clients if they want to dive into the therapy, that's wonderful. And I have a list of referrals for them. The reason I think it's super important to understand the clear lines there is re traumatization, ethics, lots of different things.
Mm.
So, I do not work with people to get into the layers of that onion. And what I have found very useful to answer your question is to take it to the level of how does it feel and show up in your body today? And I get a little bit more abstract, and people really get this. So, how does it smell familiar? Is something I'll often ask people. And I obviously don't mean literally smell, but does
Mhm.
it smell familiar? Oh, yes. Like they can feel it in their body. And when people can identify that, and I would be really curious to hear what you think about this. I I am a huge proponent of therapy. I say as often as I can, save money for therapy. There's loans for college. But I also believe in some situations, particularly time constraint, transitional moments, therapy might be better after. and that we can peel this onion so much that it creates more stress for the individual if they have something to make it through. So I'm like,
Yes.
huge proponent of therapy, like I said, but let's take what you're experiencing now. Let's identify the roots by way of how did it show up and why? What does that mean? What are you making all of this mean about yourself? And that
Mhm.
really sheds a huge light on their actions today.
Yeah, because cognitive behavioral therapy can work on triggers and can work on pattern interruption. And we've worked on that in the therapeutic situation before. The reason I coach now and the reason that I think that coaching is such a valuable thing and what you would just set up for this is the fact that it works on immediacy. It works on now and then setting up for the future, whereas therapy tends to go back and determine cause a lot of times. And that's why I think it's a great complement to have traditional therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, along with some sort of a coaching for the instant, for the moment, and to work on those triggers. And I think that brings up a good point because you talk about giving them tools to cope in the immediate, in the now. And I think in therapy, if you have those, at least it's not something that creates that freeze moment in you or that anxiety moment to where you just bail. And it's something that you can work through. And it'll bring up certain things where if you can work through them, then you think, geez, where did that come from? But it doesn't totally sabotage your life. And then you can take that information and go back to therapy and try to figure your stuff out. And that's why I think that's such a good complementary way to hit it on a 1-2 punch. There's a notion that for women that staying calm or not talking up is misidentified as weakness. I'd like you to expand on that because you're talking about composure, you teach composure and confidence, and yet you would think that would be something that would create that level of calmness and not speaking up. But is that counterproductive? What have you seen in your experience?
So I think I've seen two perspectives from people who come to me and will say, and most of them, I hope I can say a curse word on here, but they say,
Go right
oh,
ahead.
women can be seen when they're quiet. It's one of two ways typically. And it's either they're meek and they're being quiet or they're a bitch.
Hmm.
And so we tear that down. It all comes down to the way you compose yourself in the moment. How are you sitting and how are you receiving the information? And just the physical position of your body speaks volumes. So if someone is hunched in this way, that is showing more meekness. But if you're standing with your shoulders up and you have a straight spine, then your silence is more powerful.
It's really how you do it. And again, what everybody else thinks doesn't matter. It matters about you
Exactly.
be right. About you being composed in the moment. It's interesting because my background, my base is Stoic philosophy, and there's this misnomer that Stoicism is completely unemotional and just stone cold and straight. It's not. That's what people think it is. What it is, it has a lot to do with composure. Is there a misnomer about composure that it's completely unemotional? Because there is still emotion connected to that, right? But it's a controlled thing. Can you explain that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say there's a misnomer of composure. I think people want to feel composed, but when they start to think about what that perspective looks like, it could seem cold or unapproachable. The
Yeah.
reality is you're just taking the time to intake the information and process it versus react to it. That is the root of composure. You are learning to respond instead of react. So when people give themselves a moment to process the information, separate it from the physical experience that their body goes into based on old understandings and coping mechanisms,
Hmm.
they are composed. I work with men and women, and interestingly, I know we're focusing on women, but a lot of the men come to me because they are afraid that they're going to look angry.
Oh.
And it's a lot about how you present, how you're able to present yourself in the way that you're inside, you're handling the
Hmm.
responsive and
Hmm.
presenting yourself in it naturally comes out in a composed way.
As a part of your coaching strategy, does it hit on, especially with women, does it hit on trusting their own voice again, their own inner voice, their own intuition?
Yeah, 100%. So, yeah, we did our first episode all about intuition. And for my 20 years, I've taught people how to trust their intuition and how to tap into it. That is the root of confidence. That's the root of composure. And that's the first thing that tends to let go we let go of when we're under pressure, stress, and high stakes situations, when we start to doubt ourselves.
Mhm.
100% intuition is the base of it all.
Is there I've worked with this quote for quite some time, and nobody is a they say, "Oh, yeah, you've been doing this for so long. You at the top of the pyramid. Does nothing phase you?" I go, "No, stuff phases me all the time." When you talk to clients, is there this expectation that once you do you teach them or coach them that they'll be composed for the rest of their life? And do you teach them a way, first of all, just to say, "Nope, that's not how it works." And then is there something that you teach them to get them grounded before they doom spiral into a shame or a guilt for not staying composed?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the first things I talk to people about is, particularly with my program, it is intentionally a time contained program to get them through an event. So I say, you're not going to unravel 30 years of your marriage in 5 weeks, but we're going to find the sharpest knives and we're going to dull them. And then you're going to have the tools that you need to continue to replicate this sort of reprogramming throughout all areas of your life. So it's not just getting them through this moment in time. They're the tools that they'll use for the rest of their lives if they want to create change. And that I'm always reminding people that we're human. Everybody is triggered. We're triggered by things we think we've identified, then we've analyzed, then we have released. And guess what? Something smells so similar and it
Yeah.
comes right back in. And it's just an adjacent
Yeah.
underlying string.
Right.
So, yeah, we're human. We're designed to do that. And we didn't get to where we are at 55 and 60 without creating a lot of strings in our past.
Yeah, there's a few. There's a few that
Yeah.
I deal with. So speaking of that, you mentioned in your composure blueprint, you talk about next steps, micro shifts, or little things that you can do. Let's say in a scenario where a woman executive is asked to do something like now chair the meeting, and she hasn't done that before. What are some of the things that you can throw out there that would help to ground in the level of composure to create the best case scenario?
I'll give you two answers to that question. One is somebody who's never really considered, anyone listening who's never really considered the idea of actually diving into the architecture and instead looking for those in the moment tools that are great but are only symptomatic. And I teach this one, I probably showed you this on the other podcast, but it's such an easy one to explain. You tap your chest, heart center, and you're inhaling. And as you exhale, you say, "That's not my story." And it doesn't matter if she literally asked, "Hey, lead the meeting." She can turn for a minute. "That's not my story." She doesn't need to say it out loud. She can say it in her head, but it does interrupt that pathway. And the words, "That's not my story," tend to really help people flip whatever it is because
I like.
it interrupts that train of thought. So that is
Mhm.
just like in the moment. Anyone can do that at any time. The breathing is also very pertinent. In, two, and then a sharp one at the end and out slowly. You can do this once or twice. The more often somebody does it, the easier it is. It can come down to being able to just do it once to reset back into that moment because they've
Mhm.
created an anchor. The other answer to that question would be, and you asked us a bit before, how can somebody prepare? And I avoided giving the tools intentionally
Mhm.
because I want people to understand when they get into the inner architecture of themselves, they don't need those tools as much. But a preparation would be sitting down when somebody has some time, knowing that she's an executive, she's going into a meeting, and jotting down the facts of her experience, just two, three, or four that really resonate with her emotionally. I am competent. I just received this promotion. Some just three or four facts. But it's more than just making a list. It's associating and feeling the emotional connection.
Yeah.
And that's what brings it into a grounded space. And that's what communicates with their subconscious. And
Mhm.
so that in the moment, they'd be able to pull one of those out real quick.
Mhm. I love that. Every single time one of my clients comes to me and talks about that particular scenario, my first initial response is, you wouldn't be where you're at, and they wouldn't be asking you to do this unless they felt as though you were competent and you create value for what they're asking. So there's
Right.
already an implicit external validation for them being in that particular, but it's funny how they a lot of times they don't see that, and they take and all of a sudden it goes back to the imposter syndrome thing, or it all of a sudden goes back into the how am I going to do this, and it's a second guessing thing, which that's why I talked about trusting your intuition. which got them there in the
Yes.
first place. So that's the whole thing. Uh, How would somebody know that they would need a composure coach?
When someone finds themselves responding in a way they are not happy with, when somebody feels a sense of urgency to bark back, when they lose their voice, when they lose their train of thought when trying to communicate, when they can't make a decision, all of those are signs that they are getting caught up in their own history.
Uh,
My clients are constantly saying things like, I don't know why I responded that way. I got an email from, and it took me 3 hours to just breathe again. Those are dysregulations that can be absolutely addressed. And the outcomes matter, whether it's divorce or whether it's in a boardroom.
Mm.
The way that you are able to embody composure affects the outcomes.
It's like a loss of control then, a loss of control of
100%.
what you want to do and how you want to take care of things. And so when it gets to the point where they are curious about that or it's not happening, then that's actually a good idea. So that going forward, you've got your relatively new website is up, and in your FAQs on the bottom, it said, "Do I need to be going through a divorce to use this method?" And no, absolutely not. And so, can you
No,
explain about your site and what you have to offer and where somebody can get a hold of you?
absolutely. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, but everything is also on my website, which is JanineTripodi.com. Everything that I teach through this program is relative in any high stakes moment. So, people in business situations, executives, someone trying to co parent, someone divorced. The reason I hyper focused on divorce is I had personal experience in it. I left an unhealthy 20-year marriage and I got through divorce and 7 years of co parenting by using the exact tools that I teach people.
You know, the co-parenting thing, that's a huge thing. That's
It
you
is.
talk about stress, and it's not like it's going into doing mediation for a divorce. It's a long time,
Yeah.
18, 17 years for me. And that would be a huge benefit to get into something because, geez, talk about pushing buttons and triggers
Right.
during that co-parenting scenario, especially when the other parent wants to use the kid to get back
Yeah.
at you or to create revenge, all the fun stuff,
Yeah.
right? So thanks, Janine. I really appreciate it. And it's JanineTripodi.com, right? Is that the
That's
easy
right.
enough? It is. Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, Janine. I really appreciate it. And again, for me, it's theconfidencedoc.com. It can also be TonyDufresne.com, but nobody can spell it. So I can't even say Tripodi. I can't even spell my last name. So, and if you want to get a hold of me, it's Tony at theconfidencedoc.com. And like I had indicated before, I'm working on something that's about confident decision making, which actually goes right in line with what Janine's doing. And it's going to be a method, and I'll keep you informed on that. But all that being said, I do have some free stuff on my website, or get a hold of me if you have any comments or questions. I hope things are good, and I will see you later.